People today make a massive historical mistake. They speak of a unified Greek empire. There never was a single Greek empire. There was no one powerful ruling king. There was absolutely no central capital city. No single army controlled the entire region. Instead, hundreds of small independent cities existed. These scattered cities constantly fought each other. They deeply disliked their own neighboring towns. They often spoke in completely different dialects. Yet they created brilliant ideas used today. You use their brilliant ideas to vote. You witness their amazing invention in theaters. Words like logic and philosophy are theirs. A fractured civilization achieved something truly incredible. They changed how humanity thinks forever now. But this amazing story almost ended terribly. A massive threat appeared from the east. It was the largest empire ever seen. The tiny Greek cities seemed completely outmatched. They looked exactly like mere scattered grains. Defeat would have completely erased our democracy. It would have wiped out dramatic theater. This civilization built, broke, and saved itself. The remarkable story begins on an island. It started exactly 4,000 years ago. This important island was known as Crete. The prosperous Minoans lived here in peace. They built the first truly great civilization. Surprisingly, they built absolutely no defensive walls. Historians believe they simply never needed them. Their magnificent trade ships reached distant Egypt. Their massive palace was known as Knossos. It was incredibly complex and beautifully designed. Later generations invented wild myths about it. They imagined a terrifying minotaur lived there. A new powerful group emerged soon after. The Mycenaeans rose on the Greek mainland. They were fierce and heavily armed warriors. Their rich kings wore beautiful solid gold. They built incredibly massive stone defensive city walls. People thought giants had constructed these enormous structures. The legendary Trojan War happened during this era. It involved one king and a stolen queen. It featured a brutal 10-year city siege. Then everything suddenly collapsed into complete utter ruin. The Bronze Age collapse destroyed the entire Mediterranean. Great wealthy cities burned fiercely to the ground. Mighty ancient empires fell apart completely forever then. Terrible drought and dangerous famine ravaged the lands. Important trade routes broke down across the sea. Mysterious sea peoples invaded the vulnerable coastal towns. The famous palace of Nestor burned completely down. Clay administrative tablets baked hard in the fire. These baked tablets survived underground for many millennia. Greece then entered a very long dark age. The complex art of writing was completely forgotten. History remained entirely silent for 300 years. But great civilizations rarely vanish entirely from existence. Greece began to reawaken around 800 BC. They formed hundreds of independent city-states now. These new completely independent cities were called polis. Athens and Sparta became the most powerful cities. Corinth and Thebes also grew very incredibly strong. Rugged mountains divided people into completely isolated communities. Yet they shared one unified strong cultural identity. They spoke one common language and worshipped together. They met for peaceful athletic competition in Olympia. The very first historic Olympic Games happened there. Rival warring cities laid down their heavy weapons. This deep cultural unity became their greatest strength. Sparta eventually conquered its nearest helpless neighboring region. They cruelly enslaved the entire defeated local population. Controlling massive slave populations required absolute military focus. Spartan society completely transformed into a military machine. Young boys were forcibly taken from their homes. They were only 7 years old back then. Their difficult lives focused entirely on brutal discipline. They quickly learned to endure terrible physical pain. They received minimal food to encourage clever theft. They wore dangerously thin clothes during freezing winters. Sparta lacked great historical art and international trade. But they absolutely possessed the deadliest infantry force. A Spartan mother always gave a stern warning. Come back with your shield, or on it. Athens evolved in a completely different political direction. Athenian political reformers built an entirely new system. They proudly invented a radical concept called democracy. Every adult male citizen could now legally vote. They gathered excitedly on a hill called Nyx. They debated new laws passionately in public assemblies. The vibrant city thrived on free open debate. Sparta and Athens fundamentally despised each other deeply. But they would very soon need each other. A colossal new military danger threatened them both. The massive Persian Empire expanded westward extremely rapidly. Greek cities in Asia Minor rebelled totally unsuccessfully. Athens bravely sent warships to help their brothers. Persian King Darius swore terrible and bloody revenge. A massive, frightening Persian army crossed the sea. They landed aggressively on the famous Marathon Plain. Athens sent a desperate fast runner towards Sparta. Sparta could not march until the full moon. Athens bravely stood completely alone on the battlefield. 10,000 heavily armored Greek hoplites faced destruction. The invading Persian force was overwhelmingly much larger. The clever Athenian general devised a brilliant strategy. He deliberately thinned his main central defensive line. He heavily strengthened his two vital flanking units. The Greek center feigned a desperate panicked retreat. The highly confident Persians pushed forward very aggressively. The strong Greek flanks swung inwards extremely quickly. They completely encircled the shock-trapped Persian army. A small determined democratic army stopped an empire. Darius eventually died before getting his final revenge. His furious son Xerxes prepared a massive invasion. He patiently spent 10 long years building armies. He arrogantly built huge bridges across deep waters. He foolishly whipped the dangerous sea during storms. Athens watched this growing looming threat with terror. They desperately consulted the sacred oracle of Delphi. The mysterious oracle delivered a very cryptic prophecy. Only a strong wooden wall would save Athens. Anxious politicians argued over this strange divine message. Themistocles convinced everyone it absolutely meant wooden warships. Athens had just recently discovered a silver mine. They spent absolutely everything building 200 ships. Strong wooden warships quietly took shape near shores. Greece faced the terrible approaching storm very soon. They truly had only a few thousand soldiers. They also had their newly constructed wooden ships. They maintained absolute blind faith in their freedom. The largest invading army ever was coming fast. They steadily marched toward a narrow mountain pass. This historically famous pass was known as Thermopylae. A brave few hundred men would stand there. They would bravely try to stop the invaders. Western democratic civilization hung completely in the balance. The coming legendary battle would change history forever. The resilient Greek spirit remained stubbornly completely unbroken. They bravely prepared to fight for their homeland. Democracy now faced its ultimate difficult survival test. Their beautiful fragmented world found its defining moment. The truly ancient famous legends were starting soon. A totally new, incredible historical era was dawning. This is exactly how the Greek legacy survived. The grand, incredible story continues at Thermopylae eventually.